You're listening to Crash FM, and all I can say is I have an awesome job. I crash in the sun, you crash in the traffic. I'm Stryker. Hang out with me for all the action.
Yeah, we said we let it go, but we settled for the last. Couldn't let you want it though. Who am I to let you down? No, who am I to let you down? Down, if you let me walk away, maybe then we'd lose it all. No. Who am I to let you
I'm walking alone, the streets are empty. The only thing I can see is my own silhouette. I'm getting stronger, step by step. The clock is ticking, but there's no time for me. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe, trying to protect your soul. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above the sky. We are heroes tonight. Yeah. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above the sky. We are heroes tonight. Feel like a dynamite, ready to explode right up in the sky. I need you to listen, I need you to hear, and don't show any fear. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe, trying to protect your soul. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above the sky. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect your soul.
I gotta tell you, it is looking tough out there this weekend. These drivers are fighting tooth and nail. What do you think? They're racing for pink slips? We're having some great matchups, and it's only going to get more competitive as the weekend goes on.
And then there were three. Good evening, race fans, and welcome to Podium Esports coverage of the fourth race of the 2020 eNASCAR iRacing Pro Series, live from the virtual Monster Mile tonight. And we are glad to be here along with you. James Pike, Jacob Seelman, and Justin Prince down on pit road. I am Blake McCandless, and we're glad to have you along with us for race already. Can you believe it, James Pike? Race number 4 of 6. It seems like this season has flashed before our eyes, but there hasn't been any shortage of storylines in this series, and we're looking forward to building another chapter tonight after 140 miles.
We come from a week where it was all about Elliott Sadler Esports at Richmond last week. Garrett Maines comes home with the win. They take home 3 of the top 4 spots in the final running order at the end of 200 laps at Richmond Raceway. We turn our attention now to Dover International Speedway, which can have a similar penchant for carnage, if not even more so, just because this track narrows up so much on corner exit, and it's so tough to get around these straightaways. It's easy to roll yourself down into the inside wall if you get back on the gas too much. Easy to shoot yourself into the outside wall. It is a monster mile for a reason, and for as clean a race as we saw at Richmond last week, I'm not necessarily convinced it's going to be the same at Dover tonight.
No, absolutely not. I think a lot of drivers are going to be hedging their bets to the casino here on the back straightaways. We take a look at where in the virtual world we are at Dover. 24 degrees of banking in both turns 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And it's going to provide some high-speed action tonight in the NASCAR Xfinity Series cars here on iRacing. Of course, a lot of horsepower, not a lot of downforce in these cars. And perhaps, I think, Justin, as we welcome you into the booth, I think this is where the drivers really start to hit their stride. We had Daytona, obviously Auto Club, a flat, long, large racetrack. Then obviously you get to Richmond. I think this is the portion in the schedule where I think a lot of drivers who have really been tweaking on those cars are finally comfortable to try and flex their muscles here.
Yes, indeed. I was talking with a couple drivers just prior to tonight, and they felt like they were getting into a rhythm, especially. And one of the main funny things is, I was talking with one of the Elliott Sauer Esports crew chiefs and Seth Ryder just moments ago, where he mentioned each of the races on the calendar, they expected caution flags, and plenty of them. Then they got long green flag runs. Tonight, the expectations for many drivers across the garage area is essentially long green flag runs. It's surprisingly a shorter distance for competitors, 140 laps. Possible one stopper on the fuel, to say the very least, but the pressure's going to be definitely on for the drivers looking to make it into the top 21 of the points, especially with how tight the bubble itself is.
And that's what we knew coming into this series, was how tight that cut line was going to be. And you see right there, Eric Smith tied, but through virtue of a tiebreaker, at least the first car out at the moment. And a lot of names, JP, here on this list. Not a lot of names we expected to see. You look at Seth the Merchant, Zach Novak, a former eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series champion. Michael Gonzalez, obviously a lot of bad luck. Just so many names on this list that we did not think we would see so far below the cut line this early on.
Yeah, you have several drivers who have been known for being very quick. We were talking, in fact, with Michael Guerrilla, feeling like he's going to be quicker on the pace. But for drivers, they need to be quick now, especially if they're around that 15 points down mark, especially. Because below that, that's where I think it gets really tricky with how tight things are. And of course, just 2 races after tonight to get things together. In other words, there's going to be a lot of pressure. I was talking with Alex McCollum, for example, who is one of the drivers 1 point above that cut line at the moment, with a tie for 21st, mind you. Him and his team feeling like they have top 10 pace. In other words, some of them, as you said, getting to a stride. And I think tonight will show those strides being pushed on forward.
Well, and I think there's no more pressure than any race perhaps we've had this season, James Pike, is particularly what's going on right now with qualifying because of the short distance of this race. Again, Monster Mile, 140 laps. That's 140 miles here at this racetrack in a series where we've gone well past the 200-mile marker in just about every single race. This is a bit of an anomaly. Qualifying and track position is going to be in an all-time importance.
Standard race distance here at Dover is 200 laps, so we are running a little bit shorter than normal. Also a bit of a different time of day in sim. Most of these races are being run on the final few Saturdays of 2020 in sim. This is the lone race that's being run in 2021. In sim time is Monday, March 1st, 2021, right around 12:45 p.m. as they roll towards the green flag, which we'll get at approximately 1 p.m. Eastern in sim. So that could make things a little bit interesting too. More spring-like conditions you would see at Dover, and it's actually relatively warm out there too. 70 degrees or 72 degrees Fahrenheit air temp, 86 degrees Fahrenheit track temp. The other point to build off of what JP just said, lots of drivers around the cut line, and most importantly, I believe mathematically it is impossible for anyone to lock themselves into next season's Coke Series tonight. Although Mitchell DeYoung with another victory could come very close, put himself right on the edge of being able to start next week and claim his spot just by taking the green flag. But nobody else really has an opportunity to do anything, and for the most part, all 21 spots are still up for grabs.
They certainly are, and I think a couple of names that you can mention along there. You see the results from last week. Richmond Raceway Esports, you see first, second, and fourth there on the grid. I know that that organization was very proud to be defending home turf last week, and obviously they'll look to do the same today as they travel a couple of miles up north here to Dover, Delaware, to try and kind of capture the momentum that they really had there against a field that, again, is so competitive, yet the speed that they carried was just really something to behold. You see there, that's kind of where you want to be, that 11th and 20th range, if you can muster a good enough day, and especially for drivers that are above that cut line right now. There's not many of them that have a large lead, but this is where days can be made, salvaging those 12th, 13th, 14th place finishes when you can. And so in about a minute, we'll wrap up qualifying here at Dover as we'll go to the virtual racetrack here in just a moment. It looks like Elliott Sadler Esports, James Pike picking up just where they left off. Ashton Crowder, for the moment, looks like he may have just won the pole.
Crowder with a really quick time, 21.768 on the board with about 20 seconds left to go in qualifying. And then how about Derek Justice for North Force Racing, who I know has an affinity for the trucks in particular and for this racetrack. I had a feeling when I looked at the schedule that this might be a place where he could be a little bit stronger than some of the other tracks we'll see on the schedule, and not a surprise then that he's up near the top of the board as well. Other names that I noticed that are big and need big nights: Eddie Kerner, Zach Novak, Taylor Hurst, all coming into tonight below the cutoff line or around it. They could do strong finishes, Blake.
Well, and we'll see how that is going to shake out now that we have the grid for you right there. And Ashton Crowder picking up exactly where he left off. I think we were all moved in his emotional post-race interview last week. And he continues that 21.769, a nice lap time there. Ashton Crowder rolls off on the pole, and he'll be alongside North Forces Racing's Derek Justice. Alan Bowes will start on the inside of road number 2 next to Eddie Kerner. Third row inside of road number 3 is the former eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series champion in Zach Novak. 6th will go to Taylor Hurst. 7th is Isaac Gann, right next to his teammate in Zach Nichols in 8th. 9th goes to Eric Smith, and 10th will be Nathan Lyon. JP.
11th spot tonight goes the way towards Steven Wilson, needing a strong run tonight. Tied on the bubble tonight. He'll start alongside Colin Keister in the 17 machine. For Alex McCollum, they look to carry some good speed today from 13th position. They feel they have a top 10 car as Michael Guerrilla starts in 14th. Mitchell DeYoung has had a stellar pro campaign so far. He's one of the favorites for a reason. He's 15th. Top of the point standing, start alongside his points battle mate, Garrett Maines. The top 2 in points start in row 8. Row 9 sees Blaine Witt start alongside Justin Bolton, while Santiago Tierras along with Jake Matheson round out your top 20.
Few big hitters once you get past the 20th spot. Michael Guest and Chris Overland, former eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series drivers, who definitely could use it. Overland in particular in there. You ride a little bit further back. Vicente Salas, who was so quick at Richmond a week ago on the inside, starting in 25th alongside Dylan Duvall, Matt Busa, Malik Ray, more Coke Series experience, along with Yarltian back there, and Femi Olot, who had a great run going at Richmond last week as well.
Certainly did. As you continue to look down the rest of the grid there, a couple drivers rounding it out, and a couple of drivers that did not take qualifying time: Seth the Merchant, Brian Schoenberg, Jose Solis Jr., Brandon Cattell, and Colin Bowden, making up this 39 car field of 40 eligible drivers to compete in tonight's Pro Series race. So as we mentioned, only 140 laps, so this qualifying going to help these drivers that are up here in the top 10, and they're going to get after it quick. again, the fuel window for tonight, about 75 to 80 laps. So you'd have to imagine that should this thing roll out green, as we've been accustomed to seeing in this series at a track type such as this, that it would be a one-stop strategy that most of these drivers will look to utilize. So the iRacing.com Mustang pace car will pull onto the safety of pit road field under the control of the 98 Ford Mustang of Ashton Crowder, looking to pick up where he left off last week. And we're going to get green flag racing here from Dover, and a great jump from Crowder. Battle is already on for second, side by side between Alan Bowes and Derek Justice as they head off into one.
Crowder dusted them on the initial start, maybe about 2 or 3 car lengths already. He's clear of the rest of this field as Bowes gets to the inside of Justice Novak there, and already big blocks from Eddie Kerner to try and keep Isaac Gann at bay on the opening lap.
And certainly you're going to see a lot of drivers trying to protect that bottom side of the racetrack. Unfortunately, it's not worked out for Derek Justice, who started on the front row and has already fallen back to 5th a lap later. He's got Eddie Kerner. Now he has his teammate and Isaac Gann on the outside as Kerner goes low to block the run from Isaac Gann.
And some massive blocks so far early on in this race. You mentioned the importance of the bottom line. You lose the bottom line at Dover, you're likely going backwards. It can also chew a bit of the tires. Caution is out. It's Jarl Tyne in trouble in the back of the field. Brian Schoenberg involved as well.
And caution flag out early on. You can see the 6th machine of Jarl Tyne. He's got a little bit of damage on his machine, and we'll have to see. It looked like a little bit of contact here. I think it was with Femi Owat, perhaps, back in turns 3 and 4. We'll have to see. There's a little bit of a stack up here on the bottom line. And you see Femi gets rooted up out of the groove there. Just a slight bit of contact there with Jarl Tyne. Unfortunately, he's going to tag a couple of drivers in that. It looks like the 62 of Anthony Burrows gets wrapped up in that. Seth the Merchant may have caught some damage in that as well. Brandon Cattell, perhaps a little bit of damage on his kicking the tires Camaro. You see on board here, the podium machine able to slide on through there.
Somehow, some way, Danny Hansen did not come away with a lot of damage, maybe just the slightest bit of damage to the front end of his Ford Mustang. But for the most part, yeah, just Jarl Tyne and Anthony Burrows that actually picked up some bent sheet metal in this incident. But y'all had no idea what was going on. I think he came into the instant chat and threw down about 12 question marks in a row, so he had no clue what was going on. But then again, I'm not sure if there's any way you can defend that and or get away from it just with the way they stacked up behind Matt Busa.
And that's an accordion effect, Justin, that I think we're going to see, especially after these restarts here at Dover. We know Auto Club, everybody was kind of fighting to get in the bottom groove. We know Richmond, where these drivers were at last week, was like that as well. A lot of stack-ups on the bottom. And, again, everybody is just going for everything they got, especially, again, with only 3 weeks left to have a spot to run potentially in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series next year. You may think it's lap 4 or 5, but again, with just how short these races are, I don't think there's any room for patience here with this driver.
Yeah, and it's especially where if you are struggling for consistency right out the gate, it's really hard to claw your way back, right? You need a strong first couple races on the points to make sure you're comfortable and make sure you have that bit of a buffer. But the main thing to think about here is several of the drivers I talked to and several of the teams had mentioned a little bit how they have to have green flag laps for the car to be happy. Having cautions breed cautions does not make the car happy. Let's put it that way, where if you don't have the fire off speed, you're going to likely struggle and lose some spots and continue to get cycled backwards until you get a long run together.
Yeah, you definitely want those long runs if you have that speed. Although talking with a couple of drivers here before we got going here tonight, it appears that there's not a ton of fall off late in the run. I think it depends on how much speed they build in these cars for the short run or the long run, but we'll have to see. I've heard there's a pretty insignificant amount of fall off for a couple of these teams about lap 35 on, but we'll talk about that in a couple of moments. Lap number 5, lap number 6 now going on the board is once again Ashton Crowder will control this restart. He's led all 6 laps, and he gets a nice jump as well as he did that first time. Bowes, Novak, Kerner all get single file through your top 5 back to Isaac Gann. And the story of this race so far, Derek Justice now all the way back to 7th after starting on the front row.
Crowder got a decent restart this time. Not as good as the first one, though. Bose was able to track him a little bit better on the opening lap. Same for Novak and company. Biggest thing I've seen, Blake, everybody throwing the blocks to the back straightaway. And Derek Justice, yes, he slid back, but for the first time all race, he's down on that inside line, which is where I think you want to be, as Novak peeks to the inside to try and get around Alan Bose. But Isaac Gann goes high to get around the number 90 car and move up into P3. 22 looks really strong early on in this race.
Gann certainly has. He has made really no ifs about it. 7th up to 3rd in just a handful of laps. And off the corner, he's going to look low, potentially on Alan Bose here for second. And again, Isaac Gann was a driver, if you can remember, did not even start the first couple of weeks in the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro Series this season. Missed the first couple of races and relatively easily qualified his way into the Pro Series. And right now he makes the move by Alan Bose. So move that 22 Splash and Go graphics machine up into P2.
And it shouldn't be a surprise, keep in mind that some of the Norris Sports machines were top 5 in final open practice for these competitors tonight prior to the start of qualifying. So, them and the ESL Esports machines expect to be quick. Should be the same, though, for Zach Novak, who led that top of the board. And for Zach Novak, needs to get a ton of momentum. We've seen at the start of the broadcast how they struggle in the points. To say the very least, they like what they've been seeing with the speed tonight. That car looking quick. Last time by was one of the quickest on the speedway.
And I got to say, right now, if you're Alan Bose, you are going one direction, and that is backwards. Alan Bose was 3rd a lap ago. Now he's in 7th. Now he's getting challenged for 8th from Alex McCullum. So Bose perhaps the victim of, again, we've seen how dominant, at least early on in this race, how just fast these drivers are on the bottom side of the racetrack. And I think Bose and both Derek Justice earlier are showing us you do not want to get trapped on the high side. There's a long line of cars waiting to get by you. Now Eddie Kerner, the same happening to him as Derek Justice will go on by.
Just no grip in that outside lane, and the degree to which the inside lane is beating the outside lane is a surprise to me this early on. The problem, though, for anybody who gets stuck out there, given that this is a shorter race, we're not going to have as much time to rubber up the outside, and I think if you get stuck up there, you could end up in trouble. It may take a while for you to claw your way back. Derek Justice is still not where he qualified. He started in 2nd. He's still -3, even though he's finally gotten his footing once again. He's tracking Taylor Hurst nicely, but it's going to take a while for Bose to get back to the front, the same way it's taking Derek Justice a while to get back to the front.
You know, when looking up at the front of this field, there is one thing I'm starting to notice, and that's a lot of NFR at the front of the field. Isaac Gann starting to track down race leader Ashton Crowder as they will come around this time and work to lap number 15 as Isaac Gann, Taylor Hurst, Derek Justice, these drivers all work together, and we've seen that in spurts in this series that certain teams just have it figured out. And right now it looks like Gann and company are ready to steamroll up to the front of the field as he is pulled right up to the back of Ashton Crowder.
Yeah, and the thing is, the interesting mark was Zach Novak mentioned there was limited practice on social media prior to tonight's final practices. But the main thing that is always consistent, when especially with the Norris Forest group, it has been long run speed when it comes to their drivers and their focus. For many different teams, they're willing to sacrifice that fire-off speed, that short run pace in the first 15, 20 laps to make sure they have that limited fall you talked about, Blake. You don't have that limited fall-off, you're likely going backwards. That's why we've seen several drivers struggle early on, I think, in part. The main thing's going to be how they react in about lap 30, lap 40, lap 50 of this race as the laps continue. By the way, your biggest mover is that 52 Jake Matheson, up 10 positions, was the fastest car last time by at 23.2.
Yeah, Matheson has been steamrolling through this field. I was about to mention Mitchell DeYoung, who, of course, is the points leader coming into tonight of the 6 races, of course, 1 being a drop, but DeYoung in as good of a position as anybody. And I remember the last time that we had DeYoung move up this quickly during the race. It was Auto Club, and I think we all know the result of that. DeYoung, James Pike easily took down the win right there, so perhaps that VRS Chevrolet, I'm sure, wants to move up a little bit, but still in a positive direction, running just outside the top 10.
Be curious to see what the green flag pace is going to be like on that 12 car. We know how talented he is. No one's questioned that at any point during the Pro Series. It's just a matter of whether or not he can make moves. Just right on board with Clinton, Connecticut, Zach Novak, the 2019 eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series champion. I feel like we're starting to see these front three just begin to ride a bit, hang out. Crowder, Gann, Novak, all hanging around the 23.5s, which means you're also starting to see the tire fall off as well, because that's about 3/10 slower than the 23.2s these drivers are running at the beginning of the race. So anybody who saved their rubber and or wants to push will start to see it here, start to see it now. I'm already seeing some times drop back into the 23.7s, 23.8s, a little bit further back too.
That's certainly the case. I know we've talked about a couple of movers forward. There's one noticeable one that is going in the wrong direction, unfortunately. That's the number 9 of Eric Smith, who started up in the top 10 up in ninth and has already fallen back to the 22nd position. And, you know, I think this is a case, Justin, that we've been looking at a couple of drivers affiliated with a couple of drivers have just really gotten kicked up out of the groove and just haven't really had that speed. You could see right there Smith moving up the racetrack, and you could just see Michael Guest how much he gains through the center of the corner.
Yeah, you'll see it especially here. There's a couple different methods drivers prefer. There's the double apex, and some like to just try and squeeze it right next to the very edge of the apron down to the edge of the concrete. And just if you time it up right, you can get a good corner exit. The problem with Eric Smith is I think he's just really pushing way too hard on corner entry, and that's cooking the right front, I think, to where it's too tight, and that's where he's losing the speed, and partly where anyone else behind, if they get a good burst off turn 4 especially, are just going to dive right underneath, and that's a recipe for just continuing to trek on backwards. Nathan Lyon also a -6 at the moment, losing a ton of time on the racetrack. He's your second biggest loser on positions outside of Anthony Burrows, who's in that -6, and Jarl Tyen, who still has that -9 to the damage.
-9 with that damage. And again, these Xfinity cars, perhaps more than any other in iRacing, very sensitive to the aerodynamics here at this racetrack. And again, with the high banking, 24 degrees here at the Monster Mile, any bit of that aerodynamic damage is going to go a long way to potentially slowing down your race car. I also want to jump on board another driver who is, you see a close battle there, Seth DeMerchant, pinching all the way down. Again, these guys just not going to give a whole lot of room at this stage in this Pro Series. Mind you, this is a battle that is taking place back for 34th, and still not a whole lot of love given as you ride on board with Danny Hansen, who is just behind DeMerchant, and Colin Bowden there on the inside.
DeMerchant needs a good night. Comes into tonight's race buried in the point standings, 34th at about, call it 20-ish points outside of the cutoff mark. So he absolutely needs to make a charge. Danny Hansen's also underneath the cutoff line as well, 24th, albeit only 5 points back of the cutoff line. So a little bit better spot Hansen's in, but for the 57 in particular, and anybody like him that's sort of in that ballpark, Jose Solis Jr., Brian Mercurio, Colin Keister, Donovan Strauss, Steve Sheehan, Michael Gonzalez, all of these drivers need, I would almost argue, a top 10 tonight in order to get themselves properly back in contention and not have to be sweating it out at Charlotte or Homestead, Miami, just to have a shot at making the Coke Series next year.
And speaking of making the Coke Series, a driver who was in it and started with max points all the way back at the World Center of Racing, round number 1 of this Pro Series, that was Malik Ray, but just has not been able to piece together some solid efforts since then. He started 28th and still running all the way back in the 30th position. And I know with how short this season could be, 6 races, as you see Ray able to get a spot there from Jose Solis Jr., another former eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series driver in 2020. Ray was about as good as it could come. Obviously, you start with 45 points. You know you don't have to worry about that drop. But, Justin, I think he used it last week after having some issues at Richmond, was not able to continue on the duration of that race. But I think he's in a position now. You look at the live point standings on the right-hand side of your screen. That 51, 5 points out. So it has just not gone Ray's way since we left Daytona.
Yeah, sometimes the luck just doesn't go your direction, right? And it's just been that type of a case for him. Casey Kerwin on the spotter stand, and Garrison Hogan on the crew chief's box for tonight's action. I think, though, their cars are showing decent speed. The problem has been most of the drivers who are part of that technical alliance grouping have migrated their way, Blake, to the middle of the pack, and that's going to be concerning for the long run pace, especially since we're approaching midway already for this fuel run for these cars. You can see it compared to some of the Nexus machines who are just eating them alive on corner entry to the point where they're saying, you know what, may as well let him go, don't want to kill the tires and just let him on go. That case corner led by Matheson. That's got to be something that's got to be discussed now, and what they may have to try to adjust when it comes to the pit stop window. Again, around laps 77 to 78 is the furthest cars are expected to go tonight.
And I think when you talk about Nexus, you have to mention, obviously, they have definitely shown tonight with Matheson and Ryan Doucette that they have some long-run speed. But I think one of the things that speaks to this driver in the 77 right here was the effort he put forward all the way back at Auto Club at a track that was notorious for being difficult to pass, didn't pull a time in qualifying, started all the way in the back of the field, and was able to rebound and get just an incredible effort out of that day. Was Ryan Doucette, finished up in the top 10 after starting in 29th. Just an insane drive that he had, and he's doing a lot of the same here. Started in 32nd and up to the 24th position. But we'll mention that a little bit later. Ashton Crowder, I know I had talked about a lot of that line of North Force Racing machines behind him, but they are starting to get ever so smaller in Ashton Crowder's mirror, as he's now opened up the gap to Isaac Gann to just about short of 1 second, James.
Beginning to see the long run pace separate these drivers, and those who really do have it are stretching it. Crowder's got it. Gann, I think, has got it. He's opened up about a 6/7 gap to the 74 of Taylor Hurst, who also came into tonight needing a good run. He came into points 25th later in this evening, and top 5 certainly would not hurt his case to get back in top 20. Justice is still sitting in 4th, so not where he started, but I think at this stage you'll take P4 and a good top 5 run. Same for Zach Novak and Zach Nichols, who you saw in the line points graphic just a few moments ago was right there on the edge. I think for a split second he was tied with 2 other drivers for the final cutoff spot. So Nichols definitely a strong run tonight, but I feel like he needs it a little bit more than everybody ahead of him, save for Zach Novak and I guess Taylor Hurst by extension, but Novak in particular would love the top 5. He almost had one last week at Richmond, was right there in the thick of things until picked up some engine damage running into another car that blew its motor on the front straightaway. It ultimately cost Novak his chance to finish off the race. His motor blew, took a poor finish, and it hurt his campaign on what was supposed to be one of, if not maybe his best track in the Pro Series.
It's certainly helping him tonight. And Justin, as we continue to move forward here past the quarterway mark of this race, I think the one thing we have to look forward to, as we mentioned, we'll get ever so closer to the pit window here. We still have a little while before I'd imagine you see the first cars coming down pit road. I believe it'd be around lap 65 or so would be the earliest that we see drivers getting onto pit road, but that could be something that turns this race on a point in an instant, because if there's one place on the entire NASCAR schedule where it is difficult to pit under green flag conditions, I can't imagine any track that is more difficult than Dover.
Yeah, the banking is so stiff here, and keep in mind the brakes, if you don't time it up right to angle your way in your 45 degrees from that banking right underneath that commitment box, underneath the barrels, you're likely either missing the lane or crashing into said barrels. There was a couple cases when the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series went here just a couple months ago, keep in mind as well, Blake, that they blew tires coming into the pit lane itself and then crashed into the pit wall. While it's not expected that there's going to be as many blown tires tonight, there's still that difficulty in making sure you slow down enough to where you don't get the speeding penalty or overcook that entry. There's going to be a lot of discussion on that likely from these many drivers and their crew chiefs to make sure they have a gap to enter in properly into the pit lane.
Yeah, that's going to be key. And you mentioned the amount of spotters and communication here that goes on amongst these drivers. That is going to be important as well. We saw at Richmond last week, it was the cause of an incident that was the first of the race. It was contact between Eric Smith and Michael Gonzalez. And again, that was all a bit of a miscommunication on drivers entering pit road that can be oh so important in trying to get down there in time. Again, you're running right in the racing groove where you have to slow down, so that communication is going to be very, very important. We see Taylor Hurst go on by. He rides in the 3rd position in front of Derek Justice, who has done a solid job getting up into the top 20. And I think for him, a nice little statement being made here running up in the top 5, JP.
Yeah, I think so right now with the speed. This is exactly, I think, what Derek Justice needed. And it's something where there's a reason he's well respected. He's been lightning quick in many different types of cars, in many different types of official series for years now. And I think this year really showed his setup knowledge as well that had been a bit under the radar, so to speak. But the main thing with all of this is this whole grouping of cars is all lightning quick. They're all running within about 1/10 of 1 error per lap on pace. They're quicker than the mid-pack by 2 to 3/10 of a second. In our words, this is right where Derek Justice needed a race like this. The interesting point is for some of these competitors just trying to get themselves in the mid-pack, like Wade Witt, for example, here. He's been running in place in 17th this entire race. He is currently one of the other drivers who are in the 24-3s like your main leaders at the moment, but just hasn't been able to catch up to anyone else at the moment for a position.
And that's where I think in a race like this, qualifying was going to be so important. And it's amazing to see, James, the just incredible difference that we were talking about earlier on in the night, where there were some teams that you really didn't see a lot of fall off after about 30 laps. And you think back to Richmond, it was about halfway through a green flag run or even further. We had about 15 cars all stacked up nose to tail running with each other. Tonight, it is clear that if you're fast, you're not just running at the front, you are pulling away from the rest of the field.
There's a very small crop of drivers that have outright pace that are good enough to split themselves from the field. And then there's a good group here. You look at Eddie Kerner in 8th and run it all the way back to about 15th now with Brian Mercurio. Last week's winner Garrett Maines also in the mix too. But that bunch of about 6 or 7 cars pretty well packed up together. Good battle between Kerner and Steven Wilson, who's in need of a good race. Alan Bose and Mitchell DeYoung, who have been really consistent throughout the Pro Series. Alex McCollum and Colin Keister in there too with Mercurio in Maine. So fun battles there right at the back half of the top 10. But to JP's point about pit road, people are going to have to call it here. This is the toughest entry onto pit road in this year's Pro Series by far. It is also one of the toughest places to get onto pit road in all of oval racing, in iRacing, because that transition from the racing surface down on a pit lane is so abrupt and so quick, and you're turning while you're doing it, so you have to make sure you don't lock up the brakes either. Someone may get caught out by that. We may end up with a yellow depending on how well drivers get on the pit lane.
That could very well happen. And again, I imagine that we'll see in about 15 laps is when I think that pit window is going to start opening for a couple of these drivers. So you ride on board with Eddie Kerner behind him, a long line of cars as we see Brian Mercurio able to make his way by Alex McCollum, and Mercurio quietly working his way to the front of the field. Started back in 21st and has moved up here on Colin Keister as well to try to make a move by. Keister started in the 12th position, but Mercurio doing a nice job here for low line, slowly creeping on forward. But directly behind him, Justin, I think is perhaps a surprise when you talk about how dominant his teammate has been tonight. Crowder has led every lap of this race, continuing to pull away from some cars that are very fast here. But Garrett Maines mired back here in the 14th position and hasn't necessarily made those long strides forward through the pack just yet.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, one of the main things he told me prior to tonight's green flag was he felt like the handling was right where he wanted it and was just hoping the conditions were right for one, but for two, that he didn't, quote-unquote, run out of talent in qualifying. The qualifying performance wasn't there. We've seen that. And that, in turn, I think is just snowballed to where he's similar to what we've seen with Blade Witt, almost stuck in pace to where He's just waiting to see things happen, trying to, I think, get towards the pit stop window, then try and gain a few more positions, because it's so difficult to pass here and difficult to manage the tire temps, where if you push too hard for a battle, you're likely going to fry those said tires. And I think that's where, for many of the drivers, they've just had that difficulty of getting the passes done because of that balance, to make sure they don't cook the tires like an egg.
That's certainly part of it. You can see the wheel movement on your screen right there from Derek Justice. That orange tape that is on the center of that wheel, not doing a whole lot of work. That's exactly what you want to see. You can see it move to the middle as that 31 Baskin-Robbins Toyota does a little bit of a slide off the corner to, again, try to save those tires as well. But no doubt about it that these drivers up front, very, very quick here early on in the going. And I think somebody started to move up forward. I know we wrote him off a little bit earlier, but here comes Mitchell DeYoung. Just makes his move by, and he goes up to the 8th position.
DeYoung's done a very nice job of picking off the cars ahead of him, especially that group of Wilson and Kerner and Keister and Mercurio. He was behind them all. And again, another one of these charges where DeYoung's doing a few Matt Kenseth impressions over the course of this Pro Series. Hasn't necessarily qualified well, but the race pace has been there on the 12 car. And all of a sudden, he's up in the top 10 trying to hunt down Zach Novak, who has fallen off a bit over the course of this run. Still in the top 10, but it doesn't seem like that 90's as strong on a long green flag run as he is right after a restart.
Definitely important right after those restarts, but you're exactly right. Novak just doing what he needs to do to have a solid run to, again, try to make up. And it's so hard to think of when you're trying to make up these positions. You eventually get in a position, Justin, that I think you kind of have to throw a Hail Mary at some point in strategy. We've seen a couple of drivers do that already in terms of maybe pitting early or pitting late at Auto Club. I think for a lot of guys, if they feel like they're off the pace, they feel like they just have to pull something out of the bag and hope that it works. I know in talking with Mitchell DeYoung after Richmond, of course, he was so dominant at Auto Club, but that kind of led to his decision to do that two-stopper. And I think as we move into the second half of this season, that's going to be something that is much more common these next two races, as those drivers that need to make up 20, 30 some odd points off that cut line, they have to do something drastic to try and make up those points.
Speaking of drastic, how about an early pit stop by about 10-15 laps or so for Eric Smith? He is the first driver to come in blank, and he was dropping back in pace in the past couple laps, was telling drivers go high for a good full lap to make sure he got to the pit lane. So these are the types of calls you were just hitting upon. Trying to go and do something different, get an undercut, hope for a caution flag, and it gains you a ton of positions if you get said caution flag. The main thing is going to be, though, it's not been trending towards that way so far. The main difficult part as well is if there's a caution in the midst of the cycle with drivers cutting into pit, that's where it can get very ugly for him. He's already lost a lap, obviously, with this pit stop decision plus. So if he doesn't get the caution flags where he needs it to go, this could be a big gain, big risk type of situation.
Oh, it certainly is. And I think when you look at the overall running order, his teammates, I think, kind of show you that those cars, they need a little bit of something to go their way. Right now, a couple of teammates in front of him, Santiago Tires, Brandon Kittel, Chris Overland, all out of the slip angle camp, all running 36th through 39th. But you see the incredible difference that Tires makes right here. Is Smith is going to make it look easy going by a handful of cars in just about a lap or so. But you're exactly right. He needs this to ride out green, especially here at Dover. You're going to lose 2 laps under green with getting down and how slow the pit speed is, and the fact that that pit road wall extends all the way from turn 4 up to the front stretch. This is one of the longest, as far as time lost, pit roads on the series schedule as well. So Smith already 2 laps down as he tries to work by some slower traffic.
Eric Smith needs this yellow in a big way. I think not just within the context of this race, but you could argue within the context of the Pro Series. You had the good finish at Daytona, which allowed him to start the season in the top 20 in points, but it hasn't been a great last few weeks at Richmond and other places, and he's fallen out of the top 20 coming into tonight. He was right on the outside, 1 point shy, but a bad finish here would do a significant amount of damage to his hopes of making the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series for 2021. 39th, dead last, is not where you want to be if you are in the 9 car, because then you are digging yourself out of a hole at Charlotte and at Homestead, Miami. And remember, you have to be within 45 points leaving Charlotte 90 tonight in order to have a shot at making it. We're not going to write off too many people just yet, but going to have to really push in order to have some sort of luck and make sure that you at least give yourself a chance to make the Coach Series. Smith needs a yellow big time.
Well, he needs it at the right time, and he doesn't need that to happen now, as we'll see a couple of other cars make their way onto pit road. You saw JDR graphics machine of Donovan Strauss make his way onto pit road. Also, Jarl Tyen also on the pit lane as well, as pit road is going to become a busy place here in just a handful of laps as we approach the midway portion of this race. We'll go ahead and give you the iRacing midway race break, brought to you by iRacing, the world's premier online racing game. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat to experience today's newest form of competitive motorsport, virtual racing, all from your home PC. Race virtually in Australian supercars, IndyCar, IMSA, NASCAR, the World of Outlaws, and much more. And before they pit on us, we'll try to do a little bit of a full field rundown here. Ashton Crowder, dominant. An incredible performance so far. He has led all 70 laps, but Isaac Gann starting to run him down about a tenth of a lap in second. Derek Justice runs in the 3rd spot. 4th is Taylor Hurst. 5th goes to Zach Nichols. 6th is Jake Matheson. 7th goes to Zach Novak. 8th running is Mitchell DeYoung. 9th is Colin Keister and James Pike. 10th is Brian Mercurio.
Garrett Maines is 11th after winning at Richmond last week. Steven Wilson with a solid run. Figured we'd see more of this from him in the Pro Series. He's currently 12th. Blade Witt riding in the 13th position. Eddie Kerner for Total Advantage Motorsports sits in the 14th spot. 15th for Nexus Esports is the 77 of Ryan Doucette. Alex McCollum now in the 16th position. Michael Guerrilla for all the folks over at Dead Zone running in 17th, 18th. Is Nathan Lyon. Matt Busso holds the 19th position, and 20th JP belongs to the Daytona winner, the 51 of Malik Ray.
Colin Bonner last time by scored 21st position. Dylan Duvall 22nd coming down the pit lane right now. Femi Olot will get passed by several fresh tire cars. But Brian Schoenberg 24th. Danny Hansen set to Merchant. And Brandon Cattell the top 27. Santiago Torres still yet to pit along with Chris Overland. While rounding up the top 30 last time by was Vicente Salas. Last report from the pit box, tight with the hot track conditions for the number 14 machine.
Salas is tight and in 30th. 31st is Justin Bolton. He's just exiting pit road at the moment. 32nd is Michael Guest. Running 33rd is Eric J. Smith. 34th to Michael Gonzalez. Donovan Strauss is 35th. And 36th is Alan Bowes. He spun entering pit road and got some rear damage out of that, but we continue to run under the green flag as Bowes is running 36th. 37th goes to Jarl Tyen. 38th is Jose Solis Jr. 39th is Anthony Burrows. And we see the leaders who, for the most part, have made their way down pit road. We saw Ashton Crowder go by just about a lap ago. We see Derek Justice, Isaac Gann, and even our race leader at the moment right now, Zach Nichols. And oh, what a save getting into pit road. And he's going to lead a line of about 3 cars, including Taylor Hurst and Jake Matheson along with him.
Oh boy, you didn't even tell the folks about the fact that you've got 170,000 drivers on iRacing, 90 laser scan tracks and cars to choose from, and the fact that it's your portal of the iRacing world. I say it half in jest, but it is build day tomorrow, and even though we are under green flag pit stops, we'd be remiss not to mention some of the new content that is coming your way in iRacing. The IR01 car designed by Zalara to replicate some of the great open wheel race cars of the 1990s. Has the V10, 900 plus horsepower. Seth the Merchant wrecks on the entry to pit road, and all kinds of nothing as far as electronic help goes. The streets of Long Beach are going to be available. The Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo coming to iRacing tomorrow. A whole host of things that you'll want to drop some money on. So have maybe about $40 or $50 cleared in the wallet if you want to sweep up just about everything. Cedar Lake for the dirt people, along with the big block modifieds as well. One of the biggest builds in some time. That's been the word around the iRacing offices, and a lot that we're going to see drop tomorrow afternoon.
Of course, a lot being dropped, and not only in terms of content, but even Justin, changes in the qualifier for this series, the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro Series, announcing a pretty drastic format change and how they're going to decide the 20 drivers from that series that move up into this one for 2021. Some really exciting changes right there as well.
I think several drivers, the first response is, and I probably have the same one to be honest, is it could be realistic for them now, with it being where the top first, well, I should rather say the first 8 races are like normal, where you have your split started by iRating throughout the start of the campaign. But here is where it is the good compromise and what fans love to see is trouble. Chris Overland, not what he wants to see into the wall.
And that is going to cause some pandemonium here at Dover as caution flag is out in the midst of green flag pit stop. Chris Overland gets tagged and spun here on the front straightaway, and this changes everything up as he was running and again had not come down pit road. It looked like he and I think Garrett Maines got tagged on the front straightaway working through turn 4, and we'll take a look at the replay right here. There you see the fresh tires both on the inside and outside of Chris Overland, and Maines nowhere to go. Overland almost saves it, but that nose in the wall is going to be enough to spin him out and bring out the caution flag with 5, count them, 5 drivers up front.
He was just trying to take advantage of the old tires and got run over by fresh tires and Garrett Maines. But the winners of all this, Brian Schoenberg, Seth the Merchant, Brandon Kitchell. Overland would have been part of that group had he not been part of the yellow, and Eric Smith to some degree, who may take the opportunity to come down pit road again and get fresh tires given how old the Goodyear Eagles are on his machine. But that handful of drivers I just mentioned has stayed out and waited to come down pit road. They get the break they needed off the yellow, and for a lot of these drivers, Schoenberg, DeMerchant, and Kitchell all came into tonight buried in the point standings. Kittel was 33rd, DeMerchant 34th, Schoenberg 26th. Certainly not going to complain about this. This is the kind of yellow that might change their entire Pro Series, not just their fortunes in tonight's race.
Well, and I thought that is what we were going to see with this strategy, was guys who needed to throw that Hail Mary. They played their card, and it seems to have worked out as we won under the caution flag for the first time tonight at the Monster Mile. We'll go side by side with you real quick as we bring you continuing coverage of the eNASCAR iRacing Pro Series. Back in just a moment. And oh boy, has this turned things on its head. Blake McCandless, James Pike, and Justin Pritz on the call with you here from the virtual Monster Mile. And the one thing that was going to change things drastically was a caution flag in the middle of green flag pit stops, and we have gotten that. Chris Overland spins off of turn 4, and it brings us our first caution flag of the evening. And to the benefit of several drivers who were out and had not come down pit road, Brian Schoenberg, Seth DeMerchant, Brandon Kittel, and I believe those were the 4, along with Chris Overland, a part of that accident, who had not come down pit road. The rest of the field, all the way back from 6th to 37th, gonna have to take a wave around here, James. And we were talking under the break, the amount of laps they have on those tires, it really seems like this is gonna be about a 3-horse race up front, potentially between Schoenberg, DeMerchant, Kittel, and Chris Overland.
Unless Isaac Gann and Ashton Crowder are that much faster than these drivers on the new tires, that the 10-lap difference approximately between their tires and the tires of this handful of drivers that stayed out is not enough to make up the difference in speed. That's the real question. Just how good is Ashton Crowder actually? I know all things equal, the 98 is probably the fastest car in the field, but on older tires, does that equalize everything? And can Schoenberg and Demerson use the fresher rubber to keep everybody else at bay as the rest of the field gets their wave around now?
The rest of the field, that's why you see them zooming around the racetrack, is they have to try and catch this pack before they go green. Schoenberg and DeMerchant showing the way as the rest of the field tries to catch up. Again, we talk about tires. They have plenty of sets on pit road, 4 on pit road that they had coming into this race. So you imagine they used one set right there. That's not the worry, but a long single file line. They are double file for the first 2 rows, single file for the rest. And how about this? Brian Schoenberg, your leader here at Dover, as we get going green, and we'll see the difference in tires and whether Ashton Crowder and company can run these guys down. We may have to wait to the long run, but right now, Seth DeMerchant looking for the run on the high side.
And a great launch to the outside for DeMerchant, just not able to get the run quite yet as he goes to the bottom side. The Horizon Racing Team machine now with the track position they've been looking for all race. Chris Overland with the damage still in P3, but keep an eye still on Ashton Crowder. He got the lucky dog under the caution flag. Trouble, Colin Keister getting shuffled.
And Colin Keister goes up the racetrack. He is able to save it, though. Contact right there with Zach Nichols gets Keister into the wall. He got a little bit of damage out of that, but for the most part, he is still able to keep on rolling and keeps it green flag. And desperate moves being made up here throughout the pack. We see a couple of drivers side by side right now for, it looks like, about the 10th, 11th position. And, you know, this is what we were talking about, James, with Eric Smith. This caution did not work out in his favor. He gets the track position, but unfortunately for him, he's on the old tire, so he's going to have to do a lot to just try and hang on here.
He's already dropped about 4 or 5 spots since the restart, and it looks like that's going to continue because he's struggling to get that car to apex properly on the inside line. He can't hold the bottom with the tires as old as they are, so all of a sudden, here comes Brian Mercurio along the rear bumper of the 9. Nathan Lyon is right there. Vicente Salas has a shot to make this happen. It may be a question of we may have to be careful here just to make sure if you're coming from behind that you don't run into Eric Smith and cause yet another yellow. Looks like he slid up the way just a bit to try and get out of the way of Mercurio and Lyon, but we may see incidents here, especially when we saw Chris Overland get into trouble with Garrett Mays a few laps ago. It was because of the difference in tire wear. Same issue that we're going to be dealing with between Eric Smith and the rest of the field that's going to be charging from behind him.
Well, not only do you have Eric Smith, you have Malik Ray as well, who getting onto pit road went off into the barrels, and the hood is missing on his Rowdy Energy Toyota Supra. Right now scored 2 laps down after that contact into the barrels, or 1 lap down rather, but all the way back in the 39th position. So for the winner from Daytona, it has not gone his way, and perhaps Ray, you see he's not even on the live point standings as they run at the moment. But again, a lot of drivers who are further on down being benefited by this caution flag. I think that's why you see that bubble ever so tight. But Seth DeMerchant nearly 35th or so in the standings coming into tonight with this second place effort. He is all the way up to that top 20 cutoff. That just goes to show you, Justin, you can make up all these points with that one race.
Exactly, and he's doing exactly that. And there's a reason that he's been well respected on the service for the past few years. He's been strong in short track racing. We've seen him at the Cars Esport Tour, for example, over the years, have a lot of great pace. He's someone that is well respected for his setup ability and consistency. So that's all been coming to the forefront with tonight's race, especially with it being essentially a 1-mile circuit that really flexes towards this direction. The main thing that was hurting him, I think, during that last run was he got stuck there in the back of the field with all the battling after the poor qualifying performance. The inaugural Podium 500 champion is in the track position he needs right now to do things. And guess what? He's actually running faster, if not same lap times, than Ashton Crowder, who is leading in clean air before this caution flag.
So definitely keeping up the pace once he could get up front. But the interesting thing I think we were taking a note of is whether Crowder, who mind you was on a couple of lap older tires than the rest of the field, who got to come down pit road after staying out, would he be able to run these?
McCollum blew up, guys. Alex McCollum in the Bobby Dale Arts Legacy Esports machine blew up.
Alex McCollum in a heap of smoke as he limps down pit road. And this was something we saw quite a bit of last week. A lot of drivers had some issues with some engines expiring. You get a little bit of nose damage, and these drivers are running these engines absolutely to the edge. And unfortunately for McCollum, just went a hair too far. So McCollum looks like the first casualty of this race. He'll finish all the way back in the 39th position, assuming that engine cannot be repaired. But I was going to report on Ashton Crowder, who despite that tire disadvantage that he is on, he has found his way by Brandon Cattell. He has passed Chris Overland, and now Ashton Crowder in that 98 Ford Mustang starting to reel in the race leaders.
Crowder's about a 10th faster than DeMerchant and Schoenberg, lap after lap after lap. And McCollum, now that he's got that blown motor, instantly this becomes his drop race. And it's going to be interesting to see what kind of hole he has to dig himself out of. You've got precedent for the Coke Series this year. We had Michael Conti throw down the money shift on the Roval at Charlotte and blew his motor about a third of the way through the race. That put him in the position to where he had to win at Texas to get into the championship four, and when he did. So it's not impossible to battle back from, but it's a significant gap that McCollum is going to leave for himself. And we're moving away from the short tracks, which are where we know McCollum is at his strongest. He's best known on the sim, I think, for his prowess in the late models and the super late models. But it's 2.5 miles to round out the season in Charlotte and Homestead after this. So we're moving away from his domain. He's going to have to perform on the intermediates to make his way into the Coke Series once more in 21.
McCollum certainly going to be a long ways out. And mind you, of course, with the differing format here in the Pro Series, you don't exactly have the luxury of having a win in your in scenario. Of course, this is all about tallying as much points as possible. So these races where you don't see the checkered flag are going to hurt you pretty substantially here. Ashton Crowder, though, up to second. He gets by Seth the Merchant, and he has his eyes set on Brian Schoenberg, and he's to the point of about 0.2 a lap quicker than the race leader.
And I mean, is it a surprise to see this type of pace from Ashton Crowder? Him and Dave Siltman have been a dynamic duel for a good reason. One of the drivers they worked with this year, mind you, throughout 2020 is the leader right now. At one point towards the end of the season, they were working with Brian Schoenberg in his car and his crew for a good couple weeks. Schoenberg also worked with drivers like Carson Hocevar, who competes in the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series, for example, with Needs Motorsports. So there is a bit of history between these drivers where they have worked in the same page together. I think several people are jumping up and down to the fact that Brian Schoenberg is leading this race. The tough part's going to be, can he keep it up? The problem is, he is about 0.2 slower than Ashton Crowder at the moment. The tires are starting to go off on that car.
They are, and we'll see how much longer that Schoenberg can hang on. Even if he doesn't get the race win, you have to think that Schoenberg was running back again. He started in the 36th position and had not made up a ton of ground prior to that caution flag. So you'd have to think, even if he's not able to hang on here, that this is, in essence, a win for Brian Schoenberg. But right now, Crowder able to work through the center of the corner. That Mustang is fast, and he is looking to try and go to the top spot here with 36 laps to go.
This feels like a matter of when, not if. It's just when Crowder will find his way around the 55, who still has one of the fastest cars on track, mind you. Even if Crowder gets around him, he's still putting down laps that are right there in line with Seth the Merchant. They're pretty much dead even on lap time, so 55 won't complain all that much, but Crowder putting all the pressure on the North Force Racing driver to try and get the race lead just after lap 100.
Putting all the pressure he can as Schoenberg will slide up the racetrack. Here comes Ashton Crowder looking low off of turn 2. Schoenberg has it at the moment, but I think, like James said, it's a matter of when Crowder will move up the racetrack. He'll look to try and get a good exit off of turn 4, and here comes the run from Ashton Crowder down the front stretch. Schoenberg still able to hang on.
Still sliding the back tires, though, as Crowder a little bit lowered. Starting to push up tight as Brian Schoenberg as the track continues to heat up to 97 degrees Fahrenheit. Crowder checks up once again. Lap traffic is coming up close, though. Colin Keister and Eric Smith are the next cars up in line to lose a lap. They're going to potentially be a factor if this continues for the next few laps as they go down the front.
And they are probably about 15, 20 car lengths or so ahead of this battle, so hoping they can sort it out before that would become a factor. And then in front of them, you talk about Anthony Burles and Jarl Tyen, who also can become part of that. But Crowder looked like he had the speed to run Schoenberg down, but we know catching a guy and passing him are two different things. And right now, Crowder just can't seem to find a way around Schoenberg.
So now the question becomes, how much do you play with your food? How much do you force the issue? Do you try and just ride behind Schoenberg and force him into a mistake? Or do you press it and move Schoenberg up the racetrack to try and get the spot? Certainly a few ways Crowder could do it. The most important thing in his favor, though, he has time. Which is why I don't think you're going to see the 98 push the issue just yet. If he needs to, he can. But I think he's going to wait. I would suspect he's going to try and trail Schoenberg for a bit just to see if the 55 can maintain this pace. And I think more importantly, maintain that inside line that makes it so difficult to pass.
It does make it difficult to pass. Chris Overland right now running the inside line. And, you know, I have to say, Overland doing a better job than I expected. Despite being involved in that caution, you can see a little bit of damage on his spin Ford Mustang, as well as some rear end damage as well. But he has done a nice, solid job of just trying to hang on to these guys. But he's making it a little bit difficult. Obviously, running that inside line is kind of stacking them up a little bit. But Overland just trying to hang on and kind of use that caution flag that I know he got spun, he got some damage, but ultimately, Justin, it kind of worked out in his favor compared to where he was running.
Yeah, it's kind of almost like, I'm not sure how to phrase it, because I haven't really seen anything quite like it, right? Where you crash the car and then somehow you now, in part with the fresher tires, get yourself into a top 15 position possibly. There is that realistic shot. The problem is the speed's starting to balance, I think, towards Overland's direction. But when it comes to this battle up for the race lead, Schoenberg having the race of his year so far. This is the quickest he's been on the track all season, in my opinion. He's not making this easy for obvious reasons. It's difficult for Crowder to pass because he's getting the runs in the wrong spots right now. And for Ashton Crowder, he's looking to try and prove a statement here if he can get himself back up to this race lead.
You know, this reminds me of a battle we had in the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro Series top split at Darlington between Will Norton and Derek Justice. We know that Justice could chase down Norton, but Norton was just able to hold him off. Now, obviously, Darlington, much different racetrack than what we have here at the Monster Mile, but I think the difficulty in trying to get around Schoenberg is the same. Now, mind you, Schoenberg out of North Force Racing, he may not have been running up front, but he has the same speed that we saw a lot of those drivers who were running up front had. Isaac Gann, Derek Justice, just to name a few. So he's got some speed in that Mustang, and he's showing that out in the clean air. He's got what it takes to keep up.
Interesting thing I'm noticing here, watching Schoenberg over the last few laps, he's changed this line of the 55 up a little bit, entering these corners very low, sliding up in the racetrack in the middle of the corner, and then sort of crossing the lane and coming back down right on the edge of the concrete to come out of 4. And that's to ensure that Crowder doesn't get any room underneath the 55. It might not be as quick as just running the bottom outright, but with the way Schoenberg is absolutely clogging up the line right by the apron, Crowder's got nowhere to go on the inside. He's going to have to run over the 55 at this rate in order to get the spot, unless Schoenberg starts drifting up the racetrack and he leaves the door open. But the line that Schoenberg is taking has changed to make sure that the risk of giving up the inside is minimized.
And that classic diamond line working out for Brian Schoenberg out front. But a driver we had mentioned a couple of laps ago, Isaac Gann, has finally started to work around some of the other traffic that had stayed out on that last caution and ended up working out in their favor. He gets his way by up to 5th as he works around Zach Nichols and a couple others. He's got Brandon Cattell in front of him, and he's also been a little bit faster than him. So Gann potentially eventually going to work his way up into the top 4 is another driver we haven't really mentioned, Brandon Cattell. Not a lot of luck in the kickingthetires.net Chevrolet this season, but he has done a very solid job. He had a couple of slip angle teammates with him that were on that strategy, but I don't think any of them have fared quite as well as this 48 who this many laps after the restart is still up in the 4th position.
Yeah, might have a good shot still, in my opinion, for a top 10 at the very minimum, as long as he doesn't lose the right rear, and that's been something Cattell and Gann had been losing in the last run and a little bit now. But take a look again at how much this bubble has changed up. With where Schoenberg is, it's a plus 14 now to the cut line. And for Brian Schoenberg, that is absolutely massive. 26 entering tonight, had 13 lead laps on the season entering this evening. The best his average finish had been about 24th. This is, I think, better than what he may have even expected this to go. And he's been holding off, if not been quicker now, than a driver who is top 5 of the points in this series. And that's just kind of, I think, where that North Force pace is coming into play, along with that working together with lockdown. That is really starting to kick in because it's played out perfectly. Compare that to some of the Elliott Sauer Esports machines. They've been fighting with different weather conditions and still fighting with tightness, like, for example, Vicente Salas, you see.
Yeah, Salas able to work around Chris Overland, who is just on a free fall right now through the field. He's all the way back to 15th there. Justice also incurred a little bit of right front damage on his Toyota Supra. He is all the way back to 16th and also falling back. But you see Isaac Gann right here. We mentioned he was catching Brandon Cattell, and it looks like Cattell just not able to do anything with that 22 car, who, aside from a pit gamble that didn't go his way. But speaking of pit strategy, caution flag is out once again on the speedway, and oh boy, does this change things here in the waning laps of this race. It looked like Colin Bowden spinning on the front straightaway, and there's really going to be nothing to it, guys. This is just a solo spin. He clips the apron with his left front tire. You saw him do it in 1 and 2 right there. He clips the apron, and he's going to do the exact same thing here in 3 and 4. Works it through the center of the corner, cuts it down, left front on the apron, and he just spins it around.
I don't know if he was trying to run the same line that Schoenberg had adjusted to, but in either case, yeah, just the slightest catch with that left front, and it was enough to send the 46 around. But this was the last thing Brian Schoenberg wanted to see, because now everybody is going to come down pit road, and the tire cycles are all going to reset. So everybody's going to be on equal rubber here, and that really is going to burn Schoenberg's chances at the race. But it's not impossible, but we saw that all things equal on speed, Ashton Crowder was about 1/10 to 2/10 faster than everybody else under green flag conditions. Granted, it's not a long green flag run, so I think this plays into the hands of drivers like Zach Novak, who didn't necessarily have great long run pace, a little bit more, but still, fresh tires will level things out. It should allow the drivers who have had pace all night to bring themselves towards the front. We'll get a more accurate depiction in the top 10, top 15 when this is all done, in theory, of who had pace tonight and who didn't.
Well, you can talk about pace all you want, but now we got to talk about the battle off of pit road. It looks like at the end it is Ashton Crowder who makes his way off of pit road in P1. DeMerchant, Schoenberg, and Isaac Gann directly behind him. And oh boy, is this going to set something up here? We've talked about short run, we've talked about long run. Well, guess what? This is when short run's going to happen. And again, lots to look forward to here. We talked about how aggressive these drivers have been blocking down the back straightaway. I think we're going to see a fair amount of that here on this restart, Justin.
Yeah, this is going to be very intense once more. And the thing about Crowder and his pit stop entry was he was a full second nearly quicker than Brian Schoenberg. He was about 4/10 quicker, and at the quickest stop by 3/10 as well than Seth DeMerchant. And all of that really matters, and now that could be the determining factor for this race win. It all now is going to be crucial, though, to make sure that he doesn't make a mistake, and that the fact that he needs this race, I think, really in part to go green. If it comes caution, precaution, I don't know what's going to end up happening, because you might have tire spin pop up.
Tire spin could pop up. Second caution flag of the evening. We'll see you through to the checkered flag here on Podium Esports as we continue on with round number 4 of the eNASCAR iRacing Pro Series. Back with you here, and we have gotten the 1 to go signal from the flag stand. Blake McCandless, James Pike, and Justin Prince, as well as Ryan Bauer down in the virtual production trailer, ready to bring you what could be an insane last 13 laps here at Dover. Schoenberg, who looked to be clear and perhaps on his way to a victory as he started pulling away from Ashton Crowder, loses it here under caution. Crowder, good job. He'll have to give a high five to those boys on pit road. They put him out front with Seth DeMerchant in second, Schoenberg, and Isaac Gann, your top 4. Can Crowder hang on, or will some more chaos ensue? We'll get the green flag here as Ashton Crowder once again steps on the loud pedal. We are green flag racing from Dover once again. He gets out to about a car length advantage over DeMerchant. Gann does as well for third. Hurst for fourth, and they are side by side for fifth with Brian Schoenberg.
Schoenberg spun the tires a little bit on that restart. That backed up everybody on the inside line a good amount. So I think I saw Zach Novak become the first one to pop out and go to the top line to gain a few spots. And he at least managed to hang on to a spot in the top 10. But you can't say a lot about the rest of the drivers that were stuck in maybe 3-4 cars back behind the 55 machine. Meanwhile, Crowder still out in front by a car length or so over to Virgin.
And Crowder out by a car length, but a vicious side-by-side battle here going on for the 8th position. Novak stuck on the outside, and at this point in the race, he's going to give it everything she's got to try and hold off Jake Matheson, who we've chronicled a couple of times, an insane run that he's had. Trouble in the back of the pack as Justice gets in the wall. They nearly junk it up here in turn 1. Garrett Maines went low, and he and Overland nearly make contact.
They're still making your contact as tempers near flaring between them in the middle of the pack. That was around 17th position. The race lead continues to stay single file for now, though, as Seth DeMerchant looking to try and build up a run. Crowder, though, with the clean air, still continues to lead as they make more contact in the midst of that front stretch.
Yeah, they are duking it out here for about 20th. Eddie Kerner got in the wall, and they somehow save it. They are stacked up 2 by 2 for about 5 rows here. Again, 22nd on back as you see single file up front. Right now, they are 3 wide off the corner. Here comes Matt Busa up the middle.
Matt Busa with the strong move, running at about the 25th spot, but no fear here. But you need spots, and you need them quickly. We're already within the final 10 laps, and Ashton Crowder is still out in front by maybe a car length or so. Mitchell DeYoung, I saw, was going side by side a little bit ago, and still is.
Oh, trouble here in turn 3. Derek Justice sent up into the wall, but he saves it, and a whole line of cars are going to go by the Baskin-Robbins Toyota. Contact with Chris Overland gets Justice out of shape. However, he saved it.
And a big crash down the front stretch. No caution either after that as Michael Gonzalez, as he dodged that, got doored by Santiago Torres into the fence, got hit by Bowden and several other total advantage cars behind him. Still no caution. 7 to go. Crowder still leads.
And what a development here. Eric Smith has blown up at the same time. The 9 car expires on the front straightaway. So a chaotic last couple of laps here at Dover commencing before our very eyes. But it is smooth sailing at the moment for Ashton Crowder, Seth DeMerchant, and Isaac Gann, your top 3.
big night here for DeMerchant in particular, who could work his way back into the top 20 if this run holds. And Isaac Gann as well, who's had solid speed all night long. Same for Taylor Hurst. Schoenberg kind of in that DeMerchant camp where he took advantage of that yellow flag when he stayed out, could turn it into a good finish. But Ashton Crowder has had the pace to best the field all night long, and they only have 5 laps to try and find an answer to the 98 car.
And I don't think they're going to be able to. I don't think anybody has had an answer for Ashton Crowder this late or this short into a run, whether it's short or later into a run. It seems like he has been the guy to beat as they work it off the corner. It'll be 4 laps to go. Crowder, DeMerchant, and Guyan all separated by about a car length, but they just can't seem to make up any ground.
Still, Crowder continues to dominate up towards the front. He's led a majority of the night tonight. He's been the driver to beat. He's been consistent from the get-go on the long run. Last time by was 9/1000 of a second quicker than Seth DeMerchant from Horizon Racing Team. Gann, Hurst, and Schoenberg still the top 5. Still in the midst of the top 15 now, single file with 3 to go.
3 laps to go, and right now it is still Crowder. He's stretched that lead out to about another car length on Seth DeMerchant, and DeMerchant has done about the same to Isaac Gann, who runs in 3rd. Taylor Hurst hanging on in 4th, and Schoenberg still running strong up here in the top 5.
They have spread out, though, and Ashton Crowder is still the fastest man on the racetrack, although DeMerchant was actually quicker by 100th that last time by, so there may be one last charge from the 57, but now a lap and a half to go for the 98 machine to pick up his first win in the Pro Series of 2020.
And what a win this would be for Ashton Crowder as he works through 3 and 4. He wants to see the white flag. Will he get up off the banking of 24 degrees and see it? Yes, he will. One more trip around for Ashton Crowder, who we talked to last week. He moved all of our hearts with his very emotional post-race interview last week. It made a fan out of all of us, and he's going to make a fan out of you. Out of 3 and 4 for the final time, Ashton Crowder, following up his performance from Richmond, is going to go to victory lane at the Monster Mile.
And what a race and what a dominating performance for him. A bit of a crash towards the 20s as Michael Guest and several others spin around. But for Crowder, absolutely huge for him and Elliott Sauer Esports. Back-to-back wins for that technical alliance.
And just an incredible job here as Elliott Sadler, I'm sure, one very happy owner, back-to-back winner. How does that sound, Mr. Sadler, in the eNASCAR iRacing Pro Series? As last week it was Garrett Maines, as Crowder will get a little congratulatory bump from the Smithfield machine, and Crowder gets it done here in race number 4. An incredible drive for Crowder, who leads a majority of this race, and even despite a yellow flag in the middle of green flag pit stops, is able to get off of pit road first when it mattered most and able to hold the win. And Ashton Crowder will burn it out here on the front straightaway as we'll take a look at the full field rundown. Lots to talk about here in terms of the shakeup and the points. That bubble that came in around that 20th spot that was close, well, guess what? It's going to stay about just as close here through race number 5. Ashton Crowder, your winner tonight. Seth DeMerchant started in the back and is able to hang on through pit strategy and finish up in the 2nd position. 3rd will go to Isaac Gann. 4th is Taylor Hurst. 5th to Brian Schoenberg. 6th is Zach Nichols. 7th, Zach Novak. 8th goes to Jake Matheson. 9th, Brandon Cattell and Nathan Lyon. Another solid run for him rounds out your top 10.
Brian Mercurio was 11th, and again, a driver who could have used a solid finish. 36 coming into tonight in points. That'll change after this evening. Looks like Mitchell DeYoung with another solid run, continuing his stellar campaign. Points leader coming into tonight, and he finishes 12th. Steven Wilson with a good rebound finish after a tough week at Richmond last time out. He's 13th. Vicente Salas 14th this evening. Blade Witt finished in the 15th position. 16th went to Justin Bolton. Garrett Maines was 17th at the end of tonight's race. Danny Hansen 18th on the final running order. Dylan Duvall, teammate to Justin Bolton, finishes 19th. And Matt Busa in the 34 car rounds out the top 20.
Femi Oland, who comes home 21st tonight. Ryan Doucette goes to 22nd after he was one of the biggest movers prior to the caution flags. While Santiago Tires cycles to 23rd. Jarl Tyen finishes 24th after being involved in the first caution of the night, while Michael Guerrilla finishes in 25th. Chris Overland, after a lot of bumping and shoving, gets to 26th position at the stripe. He and Derek Justice may have some discussions after tonight, as Derek Justice goes from the mid-pack to 27th. Anthony Burrows among those drivers you see in the backdrop crashing out of turns 3 and 4. He, Michael Gonzalez, and Jose Salas Jr. round out the top 30.
And these are the drivers that are really going to have a steep road to climb here from this point on. Colin Bowden in 31st. Unfortunate for Michael Gann. Michael Guest, rather. He finishes up in 32nd. 33rd goes to Alan Bowes. Colin Keister, damage early on. He finishes up in 34th. 35th went to Malik Ray, who was able to get back on the lead lap, but again, with that damage, was not able to do a whole lot after that. 36th to Eddie Kerner. 37th was Donovan Strauss. You have to imagine that Horizon Racing entry is getting into desperation mode right now in terms of making the top 20. Eric Smith in 38th. 39th was Alex McCollum, and that'll round out the field. But I know he was thrilled when we talked to him last week, and I don't think it's going to be any different here tonight. Ashton Crowder in victory lane. Ashton, we talked to you last week. We know how much that solid run meant to you. How much does it mean to carry that forward and do it a couple of spots better and end up in victory lane tonight?
Because I was just talking to Matt Danson. He used to do this thing in a league where they would ask him like who he wanted to thank, and he would say all me, so all me, something like that. But no, that wasn't the best car that we've ever had. We were lacking a lot of exit turn over the long run, so really the games that we had on entry and middle, I think we were the best car through those phases of the corner. Just got evened out and really just completely negated once you got to exit. You just wheel spin, and that's what we were fighting all week. Actually, we had one setup where like the entire run, like, you know, you just give updates on what the car is doing to know what you need to adjust for, like in practice, and I was like no grip, wheel spin literally every lap. And that was kind of the same thing that we fought here today. I don't think I've ever put together a decent Dover car in my life, besides with maybe Jarl Tien in 2018 when I was with NX. But yeah, my first ever pro win. I'm just talking a bunch. It's really cool. I probably seem like I don't care at all, but yeah, I'm really happy with the result, and yeah, I'm just honestly kind of speechless. I didn't really expect to win today, much less do halfway decent. We felt quite bad, so yeah, I don't know. It's just awesome, really.
Certainly proud. And when you talk about this team now, back-to-back wins, what does it mean for your organization to continue to get it done here on such a big stage? We know how quick this season is. It is just nonstop. As soon as one race is over, the next one is up. What does it mean for you guys to come out here and consistently perform like this?
Well, it's neat that you mentioned it being back-to-back, because that's one thing that we really don't have to deal with too much in the Coke series is back-to-backs only sort of towards the end of the season, and you already know how to get the cars right at that point because, you know, the build doesn't change. So it's not easy, but it's not like incredibly difficult either with back-to-backs at the end of the season with that. But with this, I mean, the Xfinity car is just such an unknown every week, especially here at Dover. I mean, we're going 3-4 miles per hour, or not miles per hour, seconds. That might be an exaggeration, 2 or 3 seconds faster than what they go in real life, and just it honestly, it feels like the tires are coming apart every single lap, and you just have to drive it so slowly. I mean, you saw on the first run, I was backing off the pace that I could run there. I was backing it off by about 2-3 tenths a lap in the mid run, just to try to keep the right front sorta intact, and you know, he still plowed it off later. But for the team though, it's just I don't even know how to put it into words. It's just Elliott Sadler Esports is without a doubt the best. Well, I don't want to say best because that's kind of rude to other teams I've been on, but it's the most positive situation that I've ever personally been involved with. And I'm really thankful for that, because it allows you to, instead of every week kind of planning for the worst, I don't want to say you plan for the best, but you don't expect the worst. You expect something good to hopefully happen to you if everything goes right. And that's just how we've gone into all these races. Is just, I don't know, just kind of thinking, I mean, it'd be cool to win, be cool to be fast, like really fastest car, but if we can just get a top 20 or a top 10, that'd be perfect. And yeah, I mean, going back to back, I never would have thought at the start of the season that would be a possibility for our team, because it's just so tough in here. And yeah, it's just really awesome. So just huge thank you to all of them, especially Elliot, for giving me the chance.
Well, Ashton, I want to just ponder one thing with you here. How does points leader, again, this is with no drops, but through 4 races, Ashton Crowder, you're leading the points. How does that sound with just 2 races left to go?
Am I?
Yeah.
Like confirmed? Let's see. Hold on. Let me load this up. Well, it hasn't really. Oh, yeah, it has gone. Wow, I'm in the lead by quite a bit. That's crazy. I think I've only led the points once, maybe in like a competitive series. I think it was the Coke Series this year after Auto Club. So yeah, that's pretty neat. Garrett was leading the points coming into here, and he didn't have the best night. I think he may have gotten a wreck in the last couple laps. So hopefully it's not some sort of curse or something. that'd be kind of lame. But I think with this night, though, if I'm not mistaken, it locks us in to the Coke Series by fair margin. So I would say that's the most important part, just making it into the series. But yeah, that's really cool, leading the championship. I mean, we still have 2 races to go, really. Well, one that counts anyways. Yeah, we're just gonna come in next week at Charlotte, my home track, Martin Truex Jr., and just try to put together a decent finish. Just do it how we've been doing it all season, and hopefully it'll work out like it has so far.
Well, Ashton, from all of us here at Podium Esports, congratulations on your win. It's great to see the things that you guys are doing over there at Elliott Sadler Esports. And, of course, we look forward to that 98 being up front, the final 2 Tuesday nights that we get to enjoy this Pro Series.
Sure, thank you. And I want to give a quick shout-out to a couple people real quick. I know this has been the longest interview probably of your guys' lives, but, I talk a lot, and that's just a bad habit. But want to give a big shout out to my mom who's watching. I don't know if my dad is watching. I actually FaceTimed him when I was at the Charlotte Motor Speedway Christmas thing last night, and he told me the lights were lame. That was kind of upsetting. But my grandparents watching. Just the team in general. I mention them a ton, but they're really who gets it done for us. Without them, we'd be lap or trash, as Sean Gorlinski said on a Dirty Mo Posse broadcast in NR 2003. You guys for putting on the broadcast, and just iRacing in general for giving me this chance to come in here and perform. It's quite sad not being able to do it for so long, but I'm happy I haven't really lost too much of my edge, and been able to come out here and put together some really decent points days, especially today, obviously. So yeah, I'm probably forgetting like everybody in the book, but yeah, just everyone who's been supporting me, really appreciate it. And also Ryan Luza and Dylan Duvall for letting me run this car, because he won like 6 races in a row or some crazy crap in pro however many years ago, and it's the car I'm running now, so huge thanks to them.
All right, Ashton. Well, we'll let you go and celebrate with the rest of your team. No, we got one driver waiting on board, Seth DeMerchant, who has caught up with James Pike. And what a run for this driver, all the way from the back to the front, and keeps it there for about the second half of the race.
35th to 2nd for the champion of the inaugural Podium Esports Daytona 500. Seth DeMerchant now joins us in the booth. And Seth, first and foremost, take us through the decision to stay out on the old tires. There was the gamble for the yellow. I know that was part of it, but just what went into the thinking to make that call?
Yeah, we just didn't have the pace, and I messed up qualifying for the second week of the row and and just got buried in the field. And just with how close everyone is on pace, I just couldn't get through them all. So Matt Danson on the box made the call to just stay out and see if we could get a lucky yellow, and we did. We made a bunch of changes on the pit stops that helped the pace. Also, just enough to stay up in P2 there on that final restart. If we had another 10 laps, I think I would have started getting past. We really struggling past lap 20 to do anything. So I think that'll put us around 20th in points. So we'll see if we can find the speed that we're lacking the last 2 races and contend to try to make it into Cup.
Can confirm unofficially without the drops, you are 1 point outside of the cutoff, which is considerably better than where you were coming into this evening. So in the context of the whole Pro Series, does this race turn your entire season on its head after the way it started?
Yeah, I mean, anything can happen. You know, even if we don't find the speed, we can maybe luck into another finish. So we'll see. But we got a week. We got a week until Charlotte to try to figure out what we're missing in the setup, and if we can do it, we can do it, and we'll see what happens.
What's your approach going into Charlotte and Homestead? 2.5 miles to finish out the season, different than anything we've touched so far this year. So back on the horse, the intermediates we go.
I'm gonna really focus on qualifying. You know, the last 2 weeks starting 30th and 35th have been pretty rough. So I'm gonna try to put a lot of time in and get consistent at the laps, and try to actually qualify near the front so we aren't buried immediately in the race, and see what happens.
Seth the Merchant P2 this evening. Thanks for the time as always, Seth, and congratulations on your podium finish.
Thank you.
P2 for the 57 machine gets a solid podium finish to flip his fortunes. Another driver, though, who's had a solid run and now will vault himself unofficially up to 6th in points. Then you finished P3. Isaac Gann is with Justin Prince.
Yes, indeed. A very solid run, a very consistent run. Was a top 5 car just about the entire night. Isaac, how would you describe this evening and how you were able to pilot this car, essentially, as one of its quickest all day?
Yeah, it was a solid run. I mean, it was a solid run. That's all I could ask for. I was hoping for the win. I felt like there was a time there in the race where I felt like I could have got it, but overall, it was a great run. I mean, I was telling my team as soon as the race ended, we were kind of like, dang, we kind of wanted a dub there, but there's 37 other guys in the field that would have liked to have the finish that I had, so I can't be upset about that. It's a great points finish, and we'll just go to Charlotte and try to put together an effort like this again.
Some drivers have discussed already, and some were saying this before the race. Some were even saying that they were having tires to under 50% in said race chats among the drivers, that there was the difficulty of balancing out the tire wear and the tire temperatures. What was that situation like for you and your team throughout the week to figure all that out to make sure the tires didn't fry at the end of the race especially?
It was very difficult. We knew that there was a phase in the run. I don't know, I assume everybody else was dealing with it too, but we were dealing with really, really tight from about lap 10 to 20 on tires. But then about lap 20 is when it would swing back loose. So it was difficult to balance that, and I felt like that 10 to 20 range is where Ashton definitely had me beat. That first run to start the race, I got into that phase and I was just so tight, and I felt like if I pushed hard, I was just going to destroy the right front tire. So he kind of got out there about a second ahead of me, and then it just kind of evened out. It was just, we were like matching lap times over and over and over again, and it was all I could do. At that point I was driving as hard as I could go, because my car kind of came back in for me, and it was the balance was about right at that point. But yeah, there's a lot of work, to answer your question. There's a lot of work that went in this past week on trying to get the setup into a spot where we could drive about as hard as we wanted to without destroying the tires. I mean, obviously with this tire model and stuff, you still got to save the tires a little bit, no matter how good your setup is. But yeah, that was a big point of emphasis for sure.
Now, there's also a big point of emphasis now that after Brian Schoenberg, with his luck and leading laps tonight, he's 15th. There's a realistic chance you have 3 Norris Force cars who make it inside the top 21, depending on how things fare. How does that change your approach? And if it does or doesn't, what is that set approach going to be for the final 2 races of the season?
So, I felt like as a group, this was by far our best effort so far in this season. I'm so proud of everybody. There was so much work to get this car to where it was, and it was a huge team effort. There was not just 1 or 2 guys that were cranking on this thing. And it was all hands on deck. We felt like going in the race that we were pretty good, and it was just because of all the work that everybody put in. So, we all put in the work, and it showed on the track for the most part. So I'm really excited about that. So, in my opinion, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's going to take another effort these next 2 weeks, like we just had this past week and today. And I know I'm going to be doing everything I can to help everybody out on the team and help get these cars as fast as possible. Give as much info to everybody as I can, and I'm just really excited. For me personally, I feel like I'm probably in a pretty good points position. I haven't checked. I don't know where I'm at after tonight, but it's just going to be, kill it 2 more weeks, and it's just kind of like a playoff mentality with a short 6-race season.
Once again, you are currently without drops, P6 in the standings, 113 total points on the campaign. Brian Schulberg is now 15th with 89 points, while in 18th is Derek Justice. Thank you very much for the time either way as you look to try and get yourself into the Coke Series.
Yeah, one last thing. I want to make sure I thank the proper people. First of all, everybody on the team. Like I said, there was a ton of effort put into this, and I'm really proud of the work. I mean, we had guys that weren't even in the race, not even in pro, that were cranking out as many laps on the set as the guys that were actually in the race. So that was awesome to see, and thank you to David Schildhouse and Presley Gilson for spotting me and being my eyes in the sky and guiding me through everything. David, he actually even he came up, he tested with us and actually came up with an adjustment on the car that kind of helped bring it to life a little bit, because at that time we were kind of scratching our heads a little bit. So that was awesome. Matt Fortune, Vince Marsh, Taylor Hurst, Zach Novak, we've been working with those guys for pro, and they are hugely valuable. It's indescribable, their value. So thank you to those guys and everybody else on lockdown, and Splash and Go Graphics for the awesome car.
Today I learned that David Schildhouse is North Force. Congratulations either way on the podium. Back over to you, Blake, as Isaac again, very happy with the P3 performance tonight.
Very happy indeed, and I can imagine that a lot of drivers are going to be very happy as we take a look at the point standings here in the top 20. James, a lot of names stay above the cut line here, but again, around that bubble, so much movement. And you can see all the way up to Jake Matheson in 11th, just 13 points ahead of the cut line.
Really, really tight. Conversely, it'll become a little bit more apparent when we flip to the second side of things. But going into Charlotte next week, if Ashton Crowner and Mitchell DeYoung can maintain their gaps over 20th that they leave Dover with tonight, they will lock themselves into the Coke Series when we wrap up next week at Charlotte. Incidentally, Nathan Lyon and Garrett Maines only have to gain 2 points on the cutoff in order to mathematically lock themselves in by Charlotte's end as well. So that quartet, watch for them next week. They'll be actively trying to race their way in for certain into the Coke Series. Conversely, you look at the back end of the top 20, officially, nobody's out of this just yet. You go all the way back to 40th in points, and Steve Sheehan, you got it. Well, take it back. Sheehan, you got a few folks that are actually done officially. But it's tight there. Just about everybody is still in it. And the magic number here is 45 behind the 58-point gap that you see Justin Bolton. So anybody that's around, I would say, the 100-point mark, do the math very quickly, 103 is the number that you need to be within. So I suppose officially we can say goodbye to Steve Sheehan and most likely Donovan Strauss and Michael Gonzalez as well. But Colin Keister up. Everybody still has a chance to fight their way into the Coke Series for next season.
Well, and Justin Prince, taking a look at the schedule, what are your thoughts about, we kind of come to a larger racetrack. Obviously, we had Daytona Auto Club, but this is kind of the first of a string of, kind of more the base, the more mile-and-a-half type tracks that we'll see. Obviously, the Monster Mile being only 1 mile, but we really look forward to the bread and butter here. What are your thoughts as we approach Charlotte and Homestead, Miami?
The interesting mark, I think, for Charlotte is going to be the strategy, right? Because on fuel, it could be tight to try and split the race in the middle, especially if you get an early caution. That can really shake up the calls. The main thing's going to be there, though, that it's a track where several different teams like to practice on the shape of it. The main thing is, though, as well, that the track also has a lot of fall off, especially with the track weathered in with the current version on iRacing, and that could also play a major factor as the race goes on. For Homestead, I think for many, they have that circled around because several put in a ton of work for that track, whether it's for Road to Pro or for the Pro Series or for the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, to make sure they have everything settled in there, because that is so much of a driver's track. It's going to be critical. But keep in mind, it's going to be huge what happens for drivers to adjust for whatever changes may come for these competitors with the new build coming up just tomorrow. Because here's the main thing with Homestead. One of the main things adjusted, the ability to run next to the wall, and you know how there are the side forces with running against the wall in real life? Guess what's coming in that? Adjustments to make sure you can run that. So the top line may be interesting to watch, as well as the heat in the track itself is going to be something to watch as drivers have to adjust to that starting next week.
And again, only a week turnaround. So with the new build, these drivers will be very busy these next couple of nights, which, by the way, to mention it, we'll be busy these next couple of nights on Podium Esports as well. We'll wait all the way until Saturday. The Esports Drift Association will be running the Daytona Road Course. Again, that'll be 1 p.m. Eastern right here on Podium Esports. That is Saturday afternoon. Speed 51 .TV 2020 Virtual Snowball Derby. That'll also be taking place Sunday, just 24 hours later, 1 p.m. Eastern. Again, that'll be on speed51.com/esports. Next Monday night, you have a doubleheader with the Grit Ultimate Driver Challenge, multi-class racing. We've seen an IndyCar and a Pro 2 Light on the same track. So needless to say, that has been a thrilling series. You'll want to tune into that at Live Rock Park next Monday night at 7:30, and an hour and a half later, the running of the Monday Night Racing League presented by Tough Go, Street Stocks at Phoenix. That always makes for an incredible show, and that'll be live on twitch.tv/podium2. And then, of course, there were 2 races left. The running of the eNASCAR iRacing Pro Series round number 5 next week in Concord, North Carolina at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. That'll get going at 9 p.m. Eastern next Tuesday night. All your favorite stars looking to either lock their way in or get above that 21st place cutoff to get in to the 2021 eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. So that'll about do it here from the Monster Mile. For Tyler Hudson, Cicero Scaramuza at iRacing, for Gary Sexton and John Theodore at Podium Esports, and for our producer Ryan Bauer, for Justin Prince and our announcing crew James Pike, I am Blake McCandless saying so long tonight from the virtual Monster Mile, where we bid farewell, and congratulations to tonight's winner, Ashton Crowder. He takes the top spot here at Dover. Until we meet again.